writer for magazines such as Hustler, Fangoria, Grindhouse Purgatory. I have a series of really bad radio programs. I've worked on movies, comic books. I do a little bit of everything, and yet I can't make a living at any of it. I'm a VHS collector, so I started writing for Fangoria magazine, writing a column on VHS tapes, the movies you can only find on VHS. It was a little strange working for Fangoria. This is a magazine I read all through my youth. I adored this magazine, and then to actually work for them was surreal almost at first. When I first got hired, it took a day or two for it to sink in. I do consider myself a journalist, but my writing is strange in the fact that it comes from a place of opinion. I don't write in the traditional magazine style. I write in a kind of stream of consciousness. I'm not comparing myself to Hunter S. Thompson at all, but what my version of his style is a sort of stream of consciousness, quasi-conversational style, which means longer sentences, more commas, more colons and semicolons, and it reads more like how people really talk, which, when you compare that to traditional magazine style, doesn't work so much. But I do consider myself a journalist that, even though I'm giving my opinion on these things, when I'm dealing with something factual, it is backed up with facts. So, yeah, I'm a journalist. I'm just a bad one. I've gotten mail that some of the movies I've written about in my Fangoria column, for instance, people are like, I never heard of this movie. I found a 50-cent VHS of it at Goodwill, and this is now one of my favorite films. Thank you for exposing me to that. That's what I love to hear. That's what I think writing should do. It should expose people to things they didn't know. Video preservation is one of my biggest things, because people don't seem to realize just how much the movies they've never heard of influence the movies that they love. It's preserving history, I think, and I think that's the same thing with VHS. That's why VHS is so important. It's estimated that of all the movies released on VHS, and I don't just mean movies, I mean how to play poker specials and pornos and all of those police enforcement techniques and line dancing and all that stupid crap and cartoons and all this, it's estimated that less than half of that have a digital equivalent today. In the bootleg market of the 1990s, I basically grabbed anything that I thought was interesting. I looked for whatever was cool looking. Even if it was something I'd never heard of, I thought there might be somebody who's interested in this. Yeah, there was a financial aspect to it, but also I got to see shit I would have never been able to see before. But a lot of people look down on the kind of films I look for. For instance, I was at a St. Vincent de Paul earlier this year, and I was picking up a DVD of Troma's Demented Death Farm Massacre for 25 cents. And the lady behind the counter looked at it, sneered, and asked why I would want such trash like this. And it's like, because it's trash like this. Because this is not the kind of movie you're going to see on cable. These people put out so much creativity that just got lost in the static, it got lost in the ether of time, and that's unfortunate that people don't get to see these things, which is why, as much as I don't like YouTube, YouTube is helping bring a lot of this stuff back, but then you have DCMA claims, and that's a whole different topic. For the radio programs, I don't like to use the term podcast, because a podcast is literally something that was made for an iPod, and we, at least in the beginning, aired on a station called Jackalope Radio, and it was basically, I heard people doing podcasts, and they weren't very good at it. They had a lot of technical problems, they didn't know what they were talking about, they were full of shit with a lot of their topics, they rambled a lot, and I said, I can do better than that, so I did. I got together with someone I used to work with at Channel 26 out of Green Bay. We made a radio show called Lost in the Static, and it got pretty popular, and then we had a spin-off of that called Radiodrome, which was originally started by Brad Jones, known as the Cinema Snob. We brought it back. Brad stayed on for the first 150 episodes, and then he moved on to go do his own stuff, and I just kind of kept doing Radiodrome, which is obviously a spin on Videodrome, which is one of my favorite movies. At first, we would do 3 or 4 episodes at a time. I would edit them all and then release them once a week. We weren't able to really keep up with current events, so I created the show What the Fuck, to be a weekly current events show. And then that kind of got a life of its own, and I had on Hart Fisher, former Boneyard Press comic book publisher, on that as a semi-regular, and then he got his own spin-off of that called Heart Attack, and this kind of became the unofficial 1201 Beyond radio network without even really meaning it to. This was just me being a blowhard and a big mouth talking about things that I thought people should know about. It is really strange to think of people that look up to me when I used to look up to people. Joe Bob Briggs is a personal hero of mine. I still can't get an interview with the guy, no matter how hard I've tried. Joe Bob, call me. I really want to interview you. And it's strange when I've had guests on my show like Joe Dante or Fred Decker or James Glickenhaus or people like that. And it's just strange talking to these people whose work influenced me so much growing up. And then now I'm actually talking to them and they're really down to earth. And I haven't really had an experience where somebody who I've looked up to has been a jackass in real life. There's a channel out there on the Roku called OSI 74. And it's put out by Mr. Lobo and quite a few other great people. They're trying to bring back the style of 70s and early 80s TV programming. And I've got a show on there called 1201 Beyond, which is a blatant homage to Night Flight. Night Flight was the show that, again, without YouTube, people wouldn't be remembering this. And yes, full disclosure, I work for Night Flight now. But I did this before I worked for Night Flight. This is actually how I got the job. I created 1201 Beyond to be like Night Flight. Night Flight was this brilliant mesh of cult film, punk rock aesthetic, and mainstream music and movies. Where they would show you a movie, there'd be music videos, short films, cartoons, strange interstitials, old movie serials like The Crimson Ghost or the old Batman serial, and original features. And it was a brilliant 3 to 4 hour amalgamation of all of these things together. And that's what my show, 1201 Beyond, is about. We show you a full movie, music videos. I made a deal with Jello Biafra's record company, Alternative Tentacles. So we actually have real music videos on this. We have short films, original web features, old TV features. Pretty soon we're going to be serializing Shadow Stevens' old Shadow Vision, his failed Cinemax pilot, as a 10-minute serial, which strangely enough works better as a serial than it did as a pilot, and things like that. And if you go to OSI 74 on the Roku, the way Mr. Lobo puts it is the perfect way to put it. There are worse channels you could pick. It's strange how I work in both the print media and blogging and, online columns and all that. Maybe this is just my generation speaking, but for some reason it feels more real when I have something printed in Fangoria or printed in Hustler than when I write my own column on my website or I write for any of these other websites. For some reason, print seems to be more solid and it seems to have more weight to it. And I don't understand if that's just my generation not quite understanding it, or if the new generation doesn't want to be bothered to have to go pick up the new Fangoria because they don't put them on their website, or to pick up the new Hustler or anything like that. And it's kind of strange when, to go back to the VHS thing, a lot of people are getting these old VHSs and digitizing them and putting them on YouTube or on Cinemageddon or any of these other sites. And in a way, yes, that is preserving them. But at the same time, I don't know, it's not the same watching a movie on my computer than popping a VHS tape into an old analog television. But a lot of people say that I'm just wearing nostalgia blinders. But there are certain things that just, the internet doesn't make them better. I'm preserving these things for the people who will appreciate it and for future generations, because there's always going to be people who rebel against what is out there. Pop culture needs to be preserved. Pop culture needs to be remembered. And people like me are the ones that are doing it. Spreading knowledge. Even if it's stupid, pointless knowledge, you're still spreading knowledge.